It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice right now. We're going to come out of the gate blazing this morning. Our goal is to educate, inform, motivate, and activate. You know, the news over the course of the weekend is interesting. Apple declares the NSA to be a quote-unquote malicious hacker. I gotta love it. I've got to love it. You know, we see abuse overall, everywhere we look. And, you know, a lot of these companies like Apple and others, including Microsoft and Google and all the rest of these guys who are working in concert on one hand with the NSA, and on the other hand are, you know, claiming independence from them and that they've been co-opted and coerced and forced and gag ordered and what have you by national security letters and other abusive tactics, which are clearly indicative of exactly what you would expect to see out of a totalitarian regime. I mean, folks, let's face it. We're no better at this point than some South American tin pot dictatorship. We're no better than some small-minded, pencil-necked monster in Southeast Asia. That's the truth. And anything to the contrary is lies and marketing. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is true. Apple names the NSA a malicious hacker and vows a fight. That's our first segment this morning. I mean, if a company has to come out and declare that the United States of America is a malicious hacker, that ought to be a stunning signal to America. Furthermore, Bernie Sanders, or Saunders, however you say his name, the independent little tyrant from up in Vermont, the guy is a socialist. He calls himself an independent because he couldn't win running under the Socialist Party or the Communist Party. But he is an avowed socialist. He'll tell you so himself. This isn't me making it up. This is his statement, not mine. But anyway, he sent a letter to the NSA and asked them if they're spying on Congress. You know what the NSA says? Congress is no different from anyone else. You got to be kidding me. Congress has, quote, the same privacy protections as all U.S. persons. NSA's authorities to collect signals intelligence data include procedures that protect the privacy of U.S. persons. Such protections are built into and cut across the entire process. Members of Congress have the same privacy protections as all U.S. persons, which means none. You got to wonder why Congress can't seem to act against the tyranny that's occurring in our nation every single day. I'm going to tell you why. Congress has been compromised, coerced, co-opted, threatened, held hostage by their own secrets by the NSA. Some people will say, that's a bold statement, Evans. You can't make that. The heck I can't. How else can you explain to me the utter lack of ability for the Congress of the United States of America to take action against a president who is operating in open despotism and open tyranny? 11 attorneys general came out the other day and said that the president's actions on Obamacare alone and the waivers he's floated and all the changes he's made constitute a violation of law and the Constitution, because the president does not have the wherewithal or the legal authority to make law. to change law. He can only follow the law and faithfully, quote, faithfully execute the laws of the United States of America. I'll tell you why Congress is unwilling to act. And you can take all that nonsense about partisan politics out of the equation. That's not it. The truth is, the NSA's got their dirty laundry, and they quietly show it to whoever wants to raise an alarm and say, if you do this, if you don't do what we tell you, if you continue, we will expose you. Ladies and gentlemen, that is blackmail. It's why Congress the other day voted to allow it. It's why the courts have allowed it to continue. It's why the FISA court the other day gave the NSA 3 more months of authority to continue the unconstitutional, immoral, unethical, and illegal practice of spying on Americans. Senators Ron Wyden and Senator Udall came out and posted an op-ed the other day. This will be our third segment. End NSA spying now. It violates the Fourth Amendment rights of American citizens. They posted it in the New York Times. Amazingly, the New York Times actually ran it. Of course, I guess when you're a senator, and these two guys sit on the Intelligence Committee, so there's nobody better prepared. There's nobody with more inside information than these two. Nobody. You know why? Because they hear all the dirty little secrets, at least those that are exposed to them. The NSA has lied to Congress repeatedly, which in and of itself ought to qualify as an act of treason for every member who has sat before that congressional committee and told a lie, including Clapper. Clapper should be on charges right now and in prison in a maximum security facility for aiding and abetting the enemy and lying to Congress. It's a perjury charge. Our fourth topic is going to be Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos, who's the brand new owner of the Washington Post, bought it. He also owns Amazon. Interesting, isn't it? Well, what's even worse is that he is a member of the Bilderbergs, and he's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, which I exposed to you last week. But here's the worst part. He cut a deal with the CIA for $600 million. For $600 million to provide them with cloud services on the Amazon network. Well, that's not a big deal, you say. Stop right there, it is. Here's why. The Washington Post has been the recipient of a large percentage of the Snowden revelations. Because when the Guardian in the UK was getting hammered down by their own government because they don't have a freedom of the press law, and they don't have a Bill of Rights. So there is no freedom of the press in England. And when the Guardian UK felt like they were about to be shut down, what did they do? Well, they came out to other newspapers, including the Washington Post, among others. And they said, look, let's do this collectively, because if we do it collectively, they can't shut us all down. The problem is that when you've got a guy who owns the Washington Post, which was a recipient of a large percentage of this, just in time, by the way, I might add, in order for the Guardian and Greenwald to distribute some of the information through, and he has a $600 million contract with the Central Intelligence Agency for cloud services, that would be considered, folks, a conflict of interest. And it would be a conflict of interest not just in reference to the Snowden issues, but in reference to the entire concept of independent journalism. How can you have an independent journalistic level of integrity when you own a newspaper and simultaneously are on the hook for a contract worth $600 million. Now, look, by anybody's estimation, you know, when people hear the word $600 million today, they kind of scoff at like, well, what's the big deal about that? That's nothing. And the reason they do that is because we have been indoctrinated with the idea that unless something hits into the trillions, it doesn't matter. $600 million for a private corporation is a staggering sum of money. And Jeff Bezos owns that network. He's a regular attendee at the annual Bilderberg meetings. Now, if you don't know who they are, it's a relatively secret group. They are often characterized as a secret society. I don't care whether you believe in them or don't believe in them. I don't care whether you think they make a difference or don't make a difference. But he is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. And that group I exposed to you last week makes a difference. And Amazon is a charter member, as is Mr. Bezos personally. Now, you see, when you've got, if you recall, when I was talking about the CFR last week, and I exposed all the members, I gave you the lists. So if you haven't read them, that's on you. If you haven't read those lists, if you haven't read the names, if you haven't clicked on them and looked at what their history is and what their influence is, then you have failed. You have failed the test of critical thinking because you have not taken the time to do your due diligence and your homework. And you have failed your country. What do you mean I haven't? You took an oath. You know how you took an oath? You took an oath because you're breathing, because you're fogging a mirror, because you benefit from this republic that we live in. You've taken an oath. Maybe not a verbal oath, maybe not with one on a Bible, maybe not with your hand over your heart. You've taken an oath because you benefit from what our fathers, our forefathers, our grandfathers, our founders died to give you. And it's an implied oath. And you have an obligation to honor it and to protect and defend that which you have benefited from. Now, Bezos is a member, and I explained to you and exposed the idea that anytime you've got an organization that is in control of all media, you no longer have an independent media. They are compromised. You see, the real problem here is that the same people who are members of the CFR are also in large part members of our government. They're also in large part members of the corporate elite that make up all of the major corporations in the United States, the multinationals, the conglomerates, etc. The deal is incestuous because they all sit on each other's boards. In other words, the president of company A and the CEO of company A sit on the boards of companies D, E, F, G, and H. And their CEOs in turn sit on each other's boards. And then, of course, the rest of the members are media, including the owner and the general manager and the CEO of Fox News, as well as NBC, ABC, MSLSD, CBS, Communist News Network, CNN, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, the Chicago Tribune, LA Times. You see, I'm going to just give you this example because it clearly exposes the entire spider web of treason. Treason that's being perpetrated not only by active members of government, but also by the largest corporations in the world. When all government, domestic and foreign, in little as in great things, shall be drawn to Washington as the center of all power, it will render powerless the checks provided of one government on another. And we will become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated. The very definition, that was Thomas Jefferson. And Madison followed up with, the very definition of tyranny is when all powers are gathered under one place. Now, whether you consider or construe that place to be Washington, or whether you construe it to be the CFR and its minions, makes no difference, because the truth is they are one and the same. Thomas Paine said to us, tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. You see, the way you have to look at this is relatively simple, actually. This isn't real ultra complicated. What we currently have in our government today is a government that is limited based upon the individuals who are running it. I mean, we've got 535 people in Congress. We've got roughly another 50 if you want to classify the president and his cabinet and all of the members of that as the fourth executive branch. But it really goes much further than that, because the Department of Justice, as an example, is under the executive. And then we have the judiciary with a couple of thousand members. When we say that, we're talking about all of the federal justices that sit on all of the courts. Now, those are only the heads of the titular agencies, if you will. And then we have some 500 formal, official, administrative agencies, all of which operate outside the constitutional framework and boundaries. They have no authority to exist constitutionally. They are extra-constitutional by their very nature. We never delegated our authority to Congress to subdelegate the authority to a bunch of unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats. Ever. The Constitution forbids it, and Congress does it anyway. So when you count all that together, we're talking about maybe a couple of thousand individuals. Ladies and gentlemen, by its very definition, an oligarchy is a small cabal of individuals who, for all intents and purposes, act as a tyrannical government of despotism. I remind you of Alexander Hamilton's words where he said, "It will be of little avail to the people that the laws are made by men of their own choice." Aha, the elected. And they're subdelegated. It will be of little avail to the people that the laws are made by men of their own choice, if the laws be so voluminous that they cannot be read, or so incoherent that they cannot be understood. If they be repealed or revised before they are promulgated, or undergo such incessant changes that no man who knows what the law is today can guess what it will be tomorrow. The instrument by which government must act are either the authority of the law or force. If the first is destroyed, meaning the authority of the law, the last must be substituted, force. And where this becomes the ordinary instrument of government, there is an end to liberty. Ladies and gentlemen, the end is upon us of liberty and freedom in America, because our government operates in coercion, force, intimidation, threats, blackmail. There are the networks that the CIA could have contracted for, but they chose Amazon and Bezos. I'm not denigrating the capability and the wherewithal of the CDN and the cloud network that Amazon provides. It is in the upper echelon tier of the capabilities that they have, that the marketplace would want. But you see, it should have been Bezos himself who said, "I'm sorry, I can't do that. I can't have a contract with an agency that I am supposed to watchdog." That is a betrayal, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing more and nothing less. And betrayal is tyranny. It is treason, whether it's self-treason or national treason. But the truth of the matter is, it is treason. Now, Apple's come out and said, based upon the information that was given to it by the Der Spiegel revelations a couple of months ago, that the NSA has the ability to remotely push and pull files from the device to obtain and capture your SMS short message texts, to retrieve your contact lists, your voicemails, your geolocation, to remotely turn on your microphone and your camera and capture images and audio, and to identify your cell tower location with impunity through a program called Dropout Jeep. So the NSA, according to Apple, is now considered and classified as a malicious hacker. The truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, that's only the tip of the iceberg. JetPlow hacks into Cisco firewalls. Iron Chef hacks Hewlett-Packard servers. Sombernave and Ginsu target Windows computers. Yes, the one you're running right now. Irate Monk hacks Western Digital, Seagate, Maxtor, and Samsung hard drives. Try to find a hard drive that's not made by one of those companies. Some of the companies are coming out and declaring faux outrage. Some of them may be legitimate outrage. But the truth of the matter is, this is no longer a question of spying on foreign agents. I mean, the revelation that the NSA is sidelining packages from UPS and FedEx and inserting malware into your Western Digital, Seagate, Maxtor, Samsung hard drive, your Windows computer, your Hewlett-Packard servers, and your Cisco firewalls should tell you everything you need to know. I mean, let's be candid. FedEx and UPS are not exactly delivering to the Sudan or Syria or Mali or Afghanistan or Iran or Iraq, are they? They're delivering domestically, right here in the United States of America. And what that tells you, ladies and gentlemen, is that our government is operating in open terrorism against the American people by instilling fear and reigning in tyranny. We are very, very short on the timeline, ladies and gentlemen. Make no mistake about it. Your need to choose a side of the fence to reside upon is here. We're going to take a quick break. We'll return in just a moment. When we do, we're going to talk about how the NSA is spying on Congress. No wonder they're compromised. If every little dirty secret you had was out there in the hands of the NSA and you stood to lose a $195,000 a year job and your treatment as a king, no surprises there. We'll be right back. All right. We return. Happily so, I might add. You know, it's brutally cold out there today. I had to let my truck run for a good 15 minutes before I dared move it out of the driveway. Windshield was so frozen. Maybe many of you are sitting home today because work has been called off. If you live anywhere in the Midwest or upper Midwest or anywhere, I mean, I guess this really kind of blows the ceiling off the global warming argument, huh? Before we get into our topic this morning about the NSA spying on Congress and the obvious implications of that, I want to bring you to a couple of our sponsors. One, Pizza Hut in West Plains on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. They are a great sponsor of ours, and there are other Pizza Huts around, but this one in particular is unique. And the manager there is a supporter of America's Voice Now, and I'd like you to go there on Tuesdays. They have family night, which basically is kids eat free, and they have during the day they have outstanding lunch specials where you can have soup, or I'm sorry, not soup, but a salad bar and a pizza bar, and then there's other things in there like pasta and stuff like that. So if you want to eat healthy, you have the option of a salad, or you can combine that with a little bit of pizza, or you can just have the pizza if you know you really don't care. The options are yours, but I encourage you to go there. And to let them know that when you go in, just say, hey, you know, I heard about this restaurant on Mike's radio program, America's Voice Now, and I just wanted to let you know that's why I came. They need to know that their advertising works. And they also need to know that you are a fellow supporter of America's Voice Now. They're on Porter Wagoner Boulevard, and they're open late. They do deliver, by the way, so you can call over there and have one delivered as well. Our friends over at Wits End Classic Barbershop, Jason is a friend of mine. He cuts my hair about once a week. And he is on the square in West Plains. Great young fella. Shaving a haircut, 2 bits. But only if the 2 bits are silver quarters. Because it's a little bit more than that. It's actually $10. $10 will get you a great haircut. And he does do the old-fashioned hot lather shave with the towel and the whole 9 yards. So if you want to treat your guy or your significant other or yourself to a great opportunity and a unique experience in being pampered at a barbershop, most barbershops don't do that anymore. So you can go in there and get yourself lathered up, get a straight razor shave on a hot towel treatment. It's an outstanding opportunity. They're right on the square in West Plains. You can reach them at 372-2053. If you have any questions, 417-372-2053. Also, our friends over at the Patriot Cigar Bar, cigar and tobacco products are their mainstay. They're also on the square directly behind the barbershop. And Sam Miller's the owner of that place. It's number 2 Court Square in West Plains. They got a great phone number, 417-257-1776. And you can go in there and you can obtain a cigar or tobacco or pipes and all kinds of accessories and things like that. They actually have lockers in there that are humidors. And so you can rent a locker and you can keep all your cigars safe in a humidor right there. You can also bring, if you'd like, a bottle of your own favorite beverage, and you can keep it there. They can't sell it, but you can bring it with you. So if you have a particular bottle of brandy or a scotch that you like or whiskey or whatever the case may be, you can bring it with you. Keep it in your own locker there and enjoy a cigar or a pipe and the company of some other good fellow patriots. You can find them again on the Court Square in West Plains at 417-257-1776. They do have a Facebook page. It's called Patriot Cigar and Tobacco. Make sure that you jump on there. Also, you can find Wits End Classic Barber on Facebook as well. I'd lastly like to bring your attention to the law offices of Jason Henry. Very, very good criminal attorney. Handles, by the way, not only cases that are regional or state cases, but also handles federal cases, including firearms, specializing in firearms cases. If you're a felon and you've been charged with possession of a firearm, he specializes in that particular type of case as well. You can reach him. He's also on the Court Square in West Plains, right across the street from the courthouse. His telephone number is 417-256-4100. It's 417-256-4100. And he also handles things like DUIs and drug charges and other criminal cases. Has an area in his office that specializes in personal injury things, slip and falls, automobile accidents, wrongful injuries, and things like that. So make sure that you get a chance to see him. His name is Jason Henry. It's the law offices of Jason Henry, 417-256-4100. So, okay, let's jump into our topic here in reference to the NSA spying on Congress. Because, ladies and gentlemen, when you think about that, you've got a body of 535 individuals, 435 in the House, 100 in the Senate. And their job is to not only pass budgets and things like that, but to also oversee the other two branches of government, the executive and the judicial. The object of our three-tiered system is to make sure that each of the three branches is overseeing and looking over the watchdogging, if you will, the others. But according to the National Security Agency, who sent a letter to Bernie Sanders, the truth is that Congress is just like everyone else and subject to spying. Now, the NSA couches their answer by saying that Congress has the same privacy protections as all U.S. persons. But if you believe for a moment that the NSA is observing anyone's privacy protections, I've got a perfect opportunity for you to buy oceanfront property right here in Missouri. Just give me a call or email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org and tell me I'd like to buy some of that oceanfront property in Missouri. You see, the NSA is subject to oversight by Congress just like everybody else. Just like every other agency, just like the military, just like all of the administrative agencies which operate completely outside the constitutional authority and boundaries. By the way, the argument that the NSA only collects metadata has been debunked. There was an article I saw on RT, which is RussiaToday.com recently, that said that there was a study done by I think it was a university, in which they took metadata and they threw it into this algorithm system that enabled them to identify connections by pulling up, in other words, the metadata incorporates your telephone number you called from and the telephone number you called, right? As well as the time and date of the call, where you were located, GPS coordinates, etc., what tower you were on, so forth and so on. Well, simply by taking those telephone numbers that were dialed from and dialed to, they were able to, about 60% of the time, immediately within moments, identify the individuals. So the argument that the metadata doesn't have any correlation because it's anonymous is a bunch of crap. It's not anonymous. It's not. The metadata gives away all of your personal information. Because once the individual has been identified, then they can utilize other databases, including the brand new healthcare.gov database, your IRS database, the FBI database, your state NCIC and SCIC databases. NCIC is the National Crime Information Database, and SCIC is the State Crime Information Database. That's the same thing that the police officer uses when he pulls you over to see if there's any outstanding warrants on you. See, Congress, and I'm not saying they should be given a pass from that doesn't apply to anyone else. I'm not saying that they should be given high privilege. In fact, what I'm suggesting is that no American should be spied on by the NSA. That's the contrarian position from saying Congress should have some elite dispensation from it. No, they shouldn't. But the truth of the matter is that no American should be spied on. You have an infinitesimal risk of being killed by a terrorist attack in the United States of America. In fact, the risk of you being killed by a terrorist attack in the United States of America is so low that you have a better chance of winning the lottery twice on the same day. To make things even worse, In all the hearings that have been held, the NSA cannot prove a single case has been resolved. In fact, last year, they were only able to forward off some 60 hot leads. 60. You got to be kidding me. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars frightening the poop out of our American citizenry, gathering data that will be used to build and develop enemy databases, and they can only show 60 possible connections? How amazingly stupid is that? That's kind of like justifying the confiscation of all weapons to eliminate one or two murders, huh? Need I say more? You see, the real problem that we have here is that our government is not interested in capturing foreign terrorists. In fact, our president routinely assists them. He assists them with foreign aid. He assists them by, well, let's just use the example yesterday, over the course of the weekend, where the Department of Justice and someone in the Bureau of Prisons signed off to release the attorney who was transporting messages from the blind sheikh that's in jail for the original World Trade bombing back in '93, and actively taking those messages and delivering them to our enemies, aiding and abetting a terrorist organization caught red-handed, given a 10-year sentence, and after years and years and years of appeals, finally incarcerated, only to be released 3 years into that sentence by the Department of Justice. Now, there are many, many, many folks sitting in prisons today that are not guilty. And this piece of human offal, this fat, rotund little traitor, is actually out. Treated, given a welcome in the middle of New York City like a conquering, returning hero. But our government aided and abetted one who aided and abetted the enemy, proven in a court of law repeatedly. You got to be kidding me, right? No, I'm not kidding you. The failure to gather anybody from the Benghazi perpetrators, lending money and borrowing money and giving arms and weaponry to foreign governments that do not have the United States of America's best interest in hand, facilitating the TPP and the TTIP, facilitating things in the UN like the Small Arms Treaty. Those are blatant and open examples of treason. Now, you can go by the official definition of treason. But if you take the reality of what this administration and our government does on a routine basis, it's abundantly clear that even if you want to take the word treason and pull that out of the mix because you feel that's too politically incorrect or too volatile, too aggressive, then the phrase high crimes and misdemeanors would certainly be suitable. Because a high crime and a misdemeanor is the equivalent of a crime that virtually anyone could commit, but only has bearing and impact because that person is in a position of authority. And when you abuse the power and authority that you have been delegated, either as a representative or whether you're an administrative head, or it makes no difference, appointment, irrespective. If you've got power and you abuse that power, then you are guilty of a high crime. The Pentagon waived laws to keep the F-35 system on track with Chinese-made parts, even though they were warned repeatedly by officials that that was a risk to us, because by allowing China-made parts into the United States of America to be utilized in the F-35 airplane series, that we were placing our country in a position where we were open to espionage, and China is clearly an enemy of the United States of America. But we aided and abetted that enemy. The Pentagon did it. $392 billion project, and the Pentagon couldn't wait to sell us out. Lockheed Martin, the beneficiary of a $392 billion contract, couldn't wait to sell us out. As long as their bottom line got met. If you want a textbook example of the power of the military-industrial complex and how that is committing treason to feather their own nests, look it up. You want a textbook example of fascism in the United States? That's the merger of corporate interests and government. Go onto our Facebook page and take a look at the news. Can you find a more egregious example? Our own government aiding and abetting the enemy. Over and over and over and over and over. The truth is, Congress can't stop any of this. They're unwilling to, and they can't because they've been compromised, coerced, cajoled, threatened, and blackmailed. Many of them are actual believers, and that's okay. I mean, I can get being ideologically stupid. I can get being blind. But when the United States of America, as a national government, makes it a policy to blackmail the same division of the government, one of the three branches that is responsible for oversight, ladies and gentlemen, it is treason. Nothing less, nothing more. The truth is, this issue is the reason why Congress won't rein in the treason, because they've been compromised. The members will do whatever they're told to protect their personal secrets from being exposed. Whether it's fear, coercion, blackmail, under any review of jurisprudence, the entire Congress has been threatened, similar to the crime of threatening a witness to a trial. The conflict of interest is so obvious that no one can deny it. The threat to our republic is exigent and clear for anyone to see. The NSA must be stopped now. Congress must be completely replaced, and the rule of law reestablished in our nation. Nothing else will do. Nothing. There are no shortcuts to this, ladies and gentlemen. There are no interim steps. There are no half measures that will suffice. The truth is, there is no way around the crisis we find ourselves in. This isn't merely a constitutional crisis. That's bad enough. But this is a crisis of treason, a crisis of tyranny, a crisis of despotism, a crisis of lawlessness in the highest offices in the land. How do I know that? Well, when we get into our next segment and I explain to you what Senators Wyden and Udall posted up in an op-ed in the New York Times, it should be clear to all. Now, these guys are gagged from speaking out, even though they're knowledgeable about everything that's going on, or at least that which the NSA will tell them about. We know for a fact that the NSA has lied openly to Congress, including this committee, the Intelligence Committee. So I think what it really comes down to, folks, is I applaud all different manner of effort to restore our nation to some level of constitutionality and the rule of law. I like the Article 5 idea. I have my misgivings and concerns about it. No denying it. But I think the states that are passing legislation to appoint the individual or the group of individuals who will go up as their representatives, as their delegates, have the right intention and the right spirit of this, not to allow it to turn into a wide open review of the entire Constitution. I applaud that. The Convention of States, and by the way, I would encourage you to educate yourself by going to conventionofstates.com, conventionofstates.com. I applaud what they're doing. I just don't believe we have the time. Constitutional amendments historically have taken, just a couple of years just to get the thing to the point where it's been presented and open for a review and a vote. And then if it's not ratified in 5 to 7 years, which is typically the window that these amendments are open for ratification, it gives the states time to review it, to put it before their own citizens and say, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Most constitutional amendments that have been changed took years from the date of the actual submission of the amendment change to even be ratified by the individual states. What that tells you is that even if a constitutional amendment were proclaimed today, this is the one that we're going to talk about. This is the one we're going to vote on. And that's probably a year or two down the road. But even if it were presented today, the odds are very good it would not be passed and become law until after this particular tyrant and usurper and illegal gets out of office. And so, again, while I applaud that as an effort, while I applaud the attempt to take it to the courts, to get the courts to enforce the Constitution, I have no faith in that process. I say that one cannot look at this and do it in linear steps. We cannot do one step after another step after another step, instituting a new process after the failure of the previous step. But we must attack this from various sides, including flanking maneuvers, like those which have been posed by General Vallely and Lieutenant Colonel Colonel Harry Riley. The truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, the courts aren't going to help us, Congress isn't going to help us, and this administration is determined to destroy this country from the inside out. It's time to wake up and recognize that unless we stand up, we the collective people, our nation is doomed. That's not fear talking, folks. That's just looking at all the available evidence and drawing a circumstantial case conclusion. When the guy's standing there and he's covered in blood and he's got a knife in his hand and his DNA all over the body, one can't help but find it. We'll be right back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. When we come back, we're going to talk about Wyden and Udall and their op-ed in the New York Times. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Boom. We're back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host here this morning. We're in our third segment of January 6th. I'd like to remind you to support our sponsors, the Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard in West Plains, Missouri. They have great specials out there, including lunch special every day, open buffet. They have family night on Tuesday nights where kids eat free. Make sure that you get into Pizza Hut in West Plains on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. And go over to the manager and tell him Mike from America's Voice sent me. Go see our friends over at Wits End Classic Barbershop at 417-372-2053, right on the square in West Plains, and get yourself a great haircut and a shave. Make sure that you visit while you're there the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop right behind there so that you have an opportunity to treat yourself and or your family and or friends or a significant other to a unique experience. Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop is at 417-257-1776. You can find the Wits End Classic Barbershop, the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop, all on Facebook. And the law offices of Jason Henry, number 10 Court Square in West Plains, 417-256-4100, specializes in criminal law, state, federal, specializes in civil cases related to wrongful termination, personal injury cases, that kind of thing. Probably one of the best criminal attorneys I've seen around. And he handles federal cases, which is very unusual. You know, typically when we talk about federal cases, you have to go to a larger city to find somebody who actually practices in a federal court because they have to be court certified by a bunch of other traders in the court who all owe their allegiance to the court instead of you. But Jason is different. And after you've had a little bit of time to chat with him, I'm sure you'll find that to be the case. 417-256-4100. Wyden and Udall, two senators, both Democrats, who sit on the Intelligence Committee. They have the highest level of security clearance in the Congress. Not that they're really actually getting the truth, of course, from this administration, but they do have the clearance to hear it. Whether or not it's exposed to them is a whole different animal. But then, of course, the problem is that they're gagged. They can't speak out about it because if they were to do so, it would violate their super secret security clearance. But they penned in combination, the two of them now came out and penned an op-ed in the New York Times the other day. And what I really think is important about this, and this is back in November 25th, by the way, so I don't want to make it sound like it was yesterday. But I think it's important that we recognize, in light of all of the information that's come out since November 25th, including all of this stuff about the NSA diverting packages from FedEx and UPS, going to Americans to institute spyware and malware into hardware components. The idea that they can capture your iPhone traffic and your microphone on your personal tracking device, you know, that thing you carry on your belt, yeah. They can take the microphone and turn it on remotely. They can take the camera and turn it on remotely. And then they can utilize that information to spy on you. They can get in and see your entire contact database. They can draw down your text messages, even implant text messages you didn't actually send. But that was all after this particular op-ed was penned. So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes with you, and I'm going to read it. And I'll tell you why. One, America has utterly failed at their ability to read and discern what's in front of them. And two, Some of you may not have internet access and you're listening to us on another format, or you're driving in a car and you know, by the time you get to a place where you might actually be able to draw this article up and see it, you won't be able to because 9 other crises have invaded your life, which is par for the course of the plan to keep us all so busy that we don't have a chance to focus our energy to fight back. So let me just read it to you. The framers of the Constitution declared that government officials had no power to seize the records of individual Americans without evidence of wrongdoing, and they embedded this principle in the Fourth Amendment. The bulk collection of Americans' telephone records, so-called metadata, by the National Security Agency is, in our view, a clear case of a general warrant that violates the spirit of the framers' intentions. This intrusive program was authorized under a secret legal process by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. So for years, American citizens did not have the knowledge needed to challenge the infringement of their privacy rights. Our first priority is to keep Americans safe from the threat of terrorism. Reader's note here. Actually, their first priority is to keep Americans safe from government itself. But I digress. I'll try not to do that. But when I see something like that, you know, that's the rule of critical thinking. Question everything. And that statement is a blatant expose of what Congress believes that their interest and requirements are. They're not to keep Americans safe from the threat of terrorism, unless you consider the terrorism that Washington, D.C. is perpetrating on every single American. Their first job is to protect the principles of individual liberty, life, property rights, and the pursuit of happiness, and then get the heck out of the way. All right. Our first priority is to keep Americans safe from the threat of terrorism. If government agencies identify a suspected terrorism, they should absolutely go to the relevant phone company to get that person's phone records. But this can be done without collecting the records of millions of law-abiding Americans. We recall Benjamin Franklin's famous admonition that those who would give up essential liberty in the pursuit of temporary safety will lose both and deserve neither. The usefulness of the bulk collection program has been greatly exaggerated. We have yet to see any proof that it provides real unique value in protecting national security. In spite of our repeated requests, the NSA has not provided evidence of any instance when the agency used this program to review phone records that could not have been obtained using a regular court order or emergency authorization. Despite this, the Surveillance Reform Bill recently ratified by the Senate Intelligence Committee would explicitly permit the government to engage in dragnet collection as long as there were rules about when officials could look at those phone records. It would also give intelligence agencies wide latitude to conduct warrantless searches for Americans' phone calls and emails. This is not the true reform that poll after poll has shown the American people want. It is preserving business as usual. When the Bill of Rights was adopted, it established that Americans' papers and effects should be seized only when there was specific evidence of suspicious activity. It did not permit government agencies to issue general warrants as long as records seized were reviewed with the permission of senior officials. Congress has a crucial opportunity to reassert constitutionally guaranteed liberties by reforming the NSA's overbroad collection of Americans' personal data. But the Intelligence Committee bill squanders this chance. It would enable some of the most constitutionally questionable surveillance activities now exposed to the public eye. The Senate should be reining in these programs, not giving them a stamp of approval. As members of the Intelligence Committee, we strongly disagree with this approach. We had already proposed our own bipartisan surveillance reform legislation, the Intelligence Oversight and Surveillance Reform Act, which we have sponsored with a number of other senators. Our bill would prohibit the government from conducting warrantless quote, backdoor searches of all Americans' communications, including emails, text messages, and internet use, under Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It would also create a, quote, constitutional advocate, end quote, to present an opposing view when the FISC is considering major questions of law or constitutional interpretation, end quote. Rather than adopt our legislation, the Intelligence Committee chose to codify excessively broad domestic surveillance authorities. So we offered amendments. One would end the bulk collection of Americans' records, but still allow intelligence agencies to obtain information they legitimately needed for national security purposes by getting the approval of a judge, which could even be done after the fact in emergency situations. I want to stop right there and hit that point, but I'll come back. Another of our amendments sought to prevent the NSA from collecting Americans' cell phone location information in bulk, a capability that potentially turns the cell phone of every man, woman, and child in America into a tracking device. Each of these proposals represents real and meaningful reform, which we believe would have fulfilled the purpose of protecting our security and liberty. Each was rejected by the committee, in some cases by a single vote. But we will continue to engage with our colleagues and seek to advance the reforms that the American people want and deserve. As part of this effort, we will push to hold a comprehensive reform debate on the Senate floor. There is no question that our nation's intelligence professionals are dedicated, patriotic men and women who make real sacrifices to help keep our country safe and free. We believe that they should be able to do their job secure in the knowledge that their agencies have the confidence of the American people. Boy, I got to hit that one in a minute. But this trust has been undermined by the NSA's domestic surveillance programs, as well as by senior officials' misleading statements about surveillance. Only by ending the dragnet collection of ordinary Americans' private information can this trust be rebuilt. Congress needs to preserve the agency's ability to collect information that is actually necessary to guard against threats to our security. But it also needs to preserve the right of citizens to be free from unwarranted interference in their lives, which the framers understood was vital to American liberties. Penned by Ron Wyden of Oregon, Mark Udall of Colorado, and Martin Heinrich of New Mexico, all Democrats, United States Senators. Okay. You know, I want you to, now that you've heard this, I'm sure as you were listening, as it occurred in my mind, and I've read this more than once, but every time I read it, I find another nuanced phrase. I find another between the lines statement. I find some very blatant abuses of the understanding that these people actually have. In other words, they misrepresent their functional role. Their job is not to determine how far subjugation can go. Their job is not to limit oppression to half measures. Their job is not to keep Americans safe from the threat of terrorism, not exclusively. And to make that assertion, to make that their first priority, and that's their words, ladies and gentlemen, not mine. In fact, I quote, "Our first priority is to keep Americans safe from the threat of terrorism." I disagree. Your first responsibility, and your only responsibility, and your number one priority should be to honor the constitutional requirements that limit your ability to abuse us. Your first responsibility is to protect life, liberty, freedom, property rights, and the pursuit of happiness. Whatever format that takes for me or you or him or her or anyone else. But to quantify and try to encapsulate your entire responsibility to this country under the guise of a false argument that the war on terror is our only priority is wrong. Admittedly, in this article, the usefulness of the bulk collection program has been greatly exaggerated. We have yet to see any proof that it provides real unique value in protecting national security. Any proof. But you see, these guys, because of the limitations on their ability to speak freely, are not even able to really assert to the public what they know. They can only hedge around it, drop hints. Ladies and gentlemen, is that a way for our government to act? To limit the words of two members of Congress, two senators, who sit on the committees themselves, but are prohibited from actually informing their constituents and the nation when they see wrongdoing in play? I got to tell you, if that's the truth, then that exposes exactly what my point is. It's unbelievable. The Intelligence Committee would choose to codify excessively broad domestic surveillance authorities. You know, I got to tell you, when I look at where our Congress sits today, I'll tell you that I think that the quote from Jefferson that best sums this up. And it defines the very treasonous acts that are being perpetrated, willingly, willfully, and what have you. He said, single acts of tyranny may be ascribed to the accidental opinion of a day. But a series of oppressions begun at a distinguished period and pursued unalterably through every change of ministers too plainly proves a deliberate systematic plan of reducing us to slavery. Let's understand what he's saying there. Single act of tyranny may be ascribed to an accidental opinion. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they misunderstood. Maybe they just, in a panic, overthrew their power and authority. But when it's begun at a distinguished period, and there are many, many, many timeline marks I could give you, but let's use the Patriot Act and the 2001 September attacks as the example, because the Patriot Act was literally slapped down and approved and voted on when, after no one read it, within hours, or I should say days, of the 9/11 attacks, which, by the way, tells you that this was written long in advance, because Congress couldn't have written that in that brief window in time. What it tells you is that the CIA and the NSA and the FBI and all of these agencies that benefit from the expanded operations and the expanded budgets that go with it and the expanded power and the expanded authority had taken the liberty to pre-write the entire gutting of everything that we hold true and that is embodied in the First and the Second and the Fourth and the Fifth and the Sixth Amendment. The Eighth Amendment. If you don't know what those are, you better look them up. But these aren't single acts of tyranny that we can ascribe to an accident. But they are a series of oppressions that have begun at a distinguished period and have been pursued unalterably through every change of ministers. You remember the old argument of carnivore from the FBI? Well, that was back in the days of Clinton. And then echelon in the days of Bush, Junior and Senior. And we've seen this repeatedly pursued unalterably through a series of changes of ministers. Members of Congress have come and gone. Presidents have come and gone. Entire administrations have come and gone. Judicial bodies, including members in the Supreme Court, have come and gone. But we see a series of oppressions that began at a distinguished period and pursued unalterably through every change of ministers. And that plainly proves a deliberate, systematical plan of reducing us to slavery. And any argument to the contrary is propagandic in its inception. It is a lie. And it is time that America recognized the truth. We see the evidence all around us. As a nation of free men and women, we cannot tolerate the unconscionable violations that strip us of our God-given unalienable rights to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. As we perceive that happiness to be embodied. I mean, for each of us, it's different. Some of us, most of us, just want to be left alone. But the litany of actions, the list of lawlessness and abuse. Ladies and gentlemen, if we had until midnight tonight, we couldn't cover it all. And that's only in the last 5 years. And if you went 8 years prior to that, you could list the litany of treasons by Bush. And before that, Clinton. And before that, Bush. Before that, even Reagan. None of these men are paragons of virtue. None of them are patriots. You can't find a patriot, ladies and gentlemen, before 1900. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about this Bezos deal, and we're going to cover some other news information pieces that I think you should know about. Our job is to expose the propaganda that you're fed every single day. Join us at americasvoicenow.org. Find us on patriotfb.com, where you can listen to the show stream live every day. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. And then find our YouTube program and channel where you can capture all of our videos and audio. You can find that at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. We'll be right back. All right. Thanks for riding with us this morning. If you've joined us on our website and you're capturing our program streaming live there, that's great news. Appreciate you doing that. It's a great way for you to follow America's Voice Now and to kind of keep abreast of what we're doing. You can stream both audio and video there at americasvoicenow.org. We put an enormous amount of effort, and I say we because, I'm the public face of America's Voice Now, but I'm certainly not the only person there. There are a lot of folks behind us who put forth effort. You know, I've got a guy who is my partner at airbridgeweb.com. He is my partner in web development, and he does an enormous amount of effort, completely gratis, free of charge, to make America's Voice Now work. I mean, there's a lot of information on there. It's a complicated site. He's built a lot of capabilities and flexibilities into it. There's folks that help me by posting stuff up on our Facebook page. We give them administrative privileges, if you will, to be able to go in. And because, you know, I can't be all places all the time, right? I mean, I've got to, you know, sometimes I just got to function. And I actually do this completely as a voluntary effort. This is my Paul Revere moment, where, you know, if you will. And as a result, that means that, you know, I've got to actually have a job that pays the bills. So there's a lot of folks that step up to the plate and kind of help out. You know, I got a call from a fellow the other day, or an email. He said, hey, you know, if you need, he's providing me with some equipment, a microphone system. I'm extraordinarily grateful. It's an outstanding professional quality and grade piece of equipment that I could never possibly hope to afford. And I'm extraordinarily grateful to folks who do that kind of thing. If you have access to cameras, we're trying to build our television studio. If you've got access to cameras and recording equipment and boards and, you know, all of those accoutrements, please contact me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. If you'd like to assist us and participate in our effort, you know, I spend literally more than $1,000 a month, sometimes much more, out of my own pocket to make this show work. I never have gotten paid for it. I don't expect to, but I also am limited as to how much resource I can throw at this. If you can support us economically, I'd be extraordinarily grateful. You can do that by going to our website, and on our website is a PayPal link that you can simply, even if you don't have a PayPal account, you can utilize any credit card. They take American Express, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, the whole 9 yards. You can simply click there and you can make a one-time donation, or you can become a sponsor and you can support us by utilizing the monthly sponsorship. There's a silver, there's a gold, and a platinum sponsor. And if you can't handle one of those amounts, then, you know, whatever you can handle would be great. I'm very grateful to those folks who do support us. It's you know, and I certainly do not mean to denigrate their ability when I say their efforts and their generosity don't meet our bills, but they don't. And that means I've got to look to folks like you who don't support us to ask you to participate, step up to the plate and help us out. If there's any way that you can do that, I'd be extraordinarily grateful. You can mail, if you prefer to mail a money order or a check, and if you even want to do it anonymously, I don't care. You can mail to us at America's Voice Now. That's P.O. Box 1195. That's America's Voice Now, P.O. Box 1195. And that's in West Plains, Missouri. Our state is abbreviated MO. And the zip code there is 65775. So that's America's Voice Now, P.O. Box 1195, West Plains, Missouri, 65775. If you would be gracious enough to assist us, if it's a one-time thing, that's great. If it's equipment, call me or email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. And if you've got access to some, please let me know. I'd be happy to tell you where we've got a shortfall, which is pretty much everywhere. We're trying to build this television studio. If you would like to, if you are well connected enough and you've been benefited enough by our great republic to have independent wealth, then I would ask you to assist us in creating this. We can provide you with some level of return on investment if we can just get the project off the ground. We've got a program and a plan for it, but we need a large investor to step up to the plate and say, here I am, send me. if you can do that, you can email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. And I can assure you that you'll have all my attention. Okay. I want to cover some news articles and some things because, I post a ton of stuff up on our Facebook and our YouTube and our website pages and patriotfb.com. But I don't get a chance to often hit on all of them. So I kind of have to pick through there and determine what I think is appropriate to talk about in the morning and, which of these items are the most important. But there's one on there that I wanted to read you this morning, and it's a letter from an Arizona veteran. His name is Master Chief Sergeant Wooten, retired. And he, I'll let you hear it in his own words because I think it's important. Here's what he has to say. I'm still mulling that Paul Ryan budget deal that stole money from military retirees, past, present, and future. This morning, upon opening my mail, I noticed that I had a letter from a Congressman Paul Ryan, and it was begging me for a, quote, emergency end-of-the-year donation, end quote. It only proves what we already know. The folks in Washington are indeed clueless. Instead of hitting the delete button, I decided to call Congressman Ryan on his audacity and lack of self-awareness. I sent the following message to him. I'm also posting it on the Facebook USAF Chiefs page, as well as an open letter to the congressman. If you're a retiree from the military, I will tell you we may have lost the battle, but not the war. If you're inclined and find it worthy, let's flood our social media with this letter and see if we can get some traction. And here was the letter he sent to Congressman Paul Ryan. Now, Ryan, if you recall, was the architect of the budget deal where the retirees had their pensions stolen. Meanwhile, he didn't touch the pensions of the civilian sycophants and the minions that are stealing and oppressing your tax dollars and your rights every day. Okay. To Congressman Paul Ryan, please note that this request by you for a cash donation from me is extremely unfortunate and very ill-timed. You see, sir, I am one of the military retirees your, quote, bipartisan budget just impacted. You and every Republican, both the House and the Senate, that voted to pass this travesty betrayed and broke trust with me and everyone like me. You may not know us by name, but we're the people, Congressman, who answered our nation's call. Some of us at a very early age to willingly serve you and others like you so that you could safely attend college and pursue your personal ambitions without fear of harm. You might also want to note that for at least 20 years, my brothers in arms answered that call of duty every single day, without fail, without complaint, without enough money to sustain our loved ones we had to leave behind while we did our job in every corner of the earth. And for that service, we were given absolute insurance. Our so-called retirement benefits would be protected by law. The very law you shattered in your zeal to impress your Democratic cohorts in your backroom deal with the enemy. Yes, I said it. The liberal Democrats are an enemy to the American people and our nation. Your lack of judgment and eagerness to compromise on the backs of us who protected you is sickening. Congressman, you and every Republican that voted for injuring military retirees have engaged in a complicit, sordid affair with the Democrats whose objective has always been to dismantle the military. By climbing into their bed on this issue, you have confirmed that you are absolutely no better than they and have proven it with your vote. Congressman Ryan, the audacity which you display is noteworthy. But to unceremoniously snatch earned money from a small group that has added so much more value than the paltry $6 billion you look to, quote, save, which is all smoke and mirrors and you know it, is reprehensible and insulting. We have, despite the hardships, meager salaries and harsh conditions. We have performed with honor and excellence and silence, which is something most members of Congress have no idea about doing. Our job approval was, is, and always will be better than yours. We knew our mission and we got it done, then handed it off to a new generation in better shape than we found it. Your ability to look us in the eye and take money from us Apparently there was zero other sources of waste within the federal government that you could have recovered this money from, right? I got it. While simultaneously holding your hand out to beg with passion for our cash is stunning. Your actions have proven you do not have the tremendous intellect you've sold the American people on. I say with all seriousness, Congressman, what you lack in intellect and spinal rigidity, you make up for in cojones. I hope you and your cowardly Republican colleagues hear a message from me loud and clear. You will never receive another cent of financial support from me. Further, if you happen to be at a Capitol Hill dinner or at a K Street cocktail party with RNC Chair Reince Priebus, Representative Ron Barber, Senator Jeff Flake, or Senator John McCain, I would be honored if you would communicate with them that I am launching an effort to ensure none of you traitorous representatives of the people ever receive another vote from a military retiree. Remove me from your contact lists. Chuck Wooten, Chief Master Sergeant, U.S. Air Force, retired. An appropriate and well-written letter articulating what this particular Congress has done. Because there is nothing worse than violating a promise that you gave to perhaps the most dangerous men on the face of the planet. See, Ryan pissed in the wrong guy's cornflakes this morning, or with this particular issue. And I got to tell you, folks, I suspect that I'm going to keep my counsel on that. So I follow that up with a statement by President Usurper-in-Chief, Liar-in-Chief, false birth certificate, faked selective service card, and fake Social Security guy, Obama. While he was on Hawaii on vacation, he lambasted the GOP and said, because of immigration issues, and here's what he said: denying families that security is just plain cruel. We're a better country than that. We don't abandon our fellow Americans when times get tough. We keep the faith with them until they start that new job. Well, I beg to differ, Mr. President, and I use that term loosely. You have denied families that security. You've stolen it from our senior veterans. You've stolen it from those men who put forth their entire career and passed up opportunities in the public, in the private sector that may well have paid them far greater money. You've betrayed them, and you've denied them the security that we promised to them as a sacred oath. And you did abandon our fellow Americans, and times haven't even gotten tough yet. So you see, on top of the fact that you're not who you say you are, and you're a usurper, and you act in open, blatant, brazen treason and tyranny against your own countrymen, or at least your claimed countrymen, the truth of the matter is, you have abandoned fellow Americans. You abandoned our veterans when you signed this bill. You abandoned our veterans and our active duty personnel in Benghazi. Because abandonment is what you're all about. Abandoning our Constitution. Abandoning our nation. Abandoning the principles of the Second Amendment. Abandoning the principles of the First Amendment, the Third Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth, the Eighth. Oh, you don't count cruel and unusual punishment to be indefinite detention? Well, I do. And I reiterate George Washington's very clear statement. A free people ought not only to be armed and disciplined, but they should have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence from any who might attempt to abuse them, which would include their own government. You know, there's a gun company out there called Desert Tactical Arms based out of Utah. And you know what? They refuse to sell weaponry to Pakistan. You know why I applaud that? Because they put their ethics over money. They put their loyalty to their nation over money. They put their loyalty to the lives of Americans over money. If there's any way that you can do business with Desert Tactical Arms of Utah, then I would strongly encourage you to do so. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we want to support and encourage positive patriotic activity, while simultaneously demonizing that which we all know to be violative of everything that this country stands for. On other news, if you would like to join the class action lawsuit against the NSA, Rand Paul has filed one. You can go to his website, rand-2016.com, rand-2016.com, and sign up to be a plaintiff in a class action lawsuit that should incorporate virtually anyone in the United States of America who has a cell phone, or uses email, or owns a computer. Boy, I got to tell you. You know, when we see the actions on the behalf of companies like the Utah gun manufacturer called Desert Tactical Arms, and we see the courage of a guy like that dude who ran LavaBit, right? Levinson. When he shut down his business and wiped the drives clean. And he's under threat now because they've got the threat of prison looming over him because he chose to shut the business down rather than betray his clients and supply the NSA with information on Americans. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a tragedy. See, I'm not sure what we're waiting for here. I mean, I understand that our goal here is to restore the nation, and never to do so in a manner that would require a violent confrontation. Our goal should always be peaceful measures to resolve and restore and bring this country back, bring the ship back into line. But I got to tell you, I'm not so sure if we were to look at past history that our founders would have done the same. In fact, I know they didn't. And I believe, and I think most individuals who are intellectually honest would agree that where we are right now far exceeds the tyranny that we experienced under a third-party king who declared himself to be over and above the United States of America. But to make matters even worse, and they understood the oppression from their own government. But it wasn't a government they chose. It was a government by monarchy that was fostered upon them. They didn't have an option. We, on the other hand, have elected our government, and that makes their betrayal, their tyranny, their treason, their despotism, their lawlessness all the worse. Where do we go from here, ladies and gentlemen? Where do we go from here? The IMF is out there declaring that it might be good policy to go in and raid the bank accounts, the savings accounts, the retirement accounts of all Americans, to pay off debt. We're going to talk about that tomorrow in depth. Because, you see, that is the ultimate height of treason. I posted an article up there today called "The Bankers Are Coming. The Bankers Are Coming." And I stated that Paul Revere would have been just as accurate with that cry if only he knew how foolishly the American sheeple would allow the brazen acts of treason and tyranny that the nation is subjected to by their own government. I've been warning about a series of actions similar to Cyprus, where the banks will seize private account holders' money to pay government debt. The IMF is advocating it worldwide. This is a crime against humanity and should be treated as such. There are 2 linked articles. I encourage you to see them. You can find them by going to our website at americasvoicenow.org. You can find them by going to our Facebook page at facebook.com/AmericasVoiceNow, even if you're not a Facebook user. It's a public page. You can find them by going to patriotfb.com, where we're a member there. It's similar to Facebook, but Patriots only. No censorship. You can find it by seeing the links tomorrow after the show. When I stream these programs on YouTube, I always put the links of the stories that I refer to or I read from in the section that describes the video, what it's about. If you haven't dropped down the little arrow, that's your problem. I expect you to be effective, to be intelligent, to not be a ninny. I expect you, after you listen to these programs, to take action. Sometimes that's just educating yourself. But sometimes that's exercising your leadership to influence anyone and everyone around you in your personal circle of influence or your corporate circle of influence. Make sure that you see our friends over at Wits End Classic Barbershop, our friends over at the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop. You can find both of those folks on the square. You can also find the law offices of Jason Henry there on the square. You can call him at 417-256-4100. Our friends over at Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard in West Plains. I go there for lunch fairly frequently, and I'd like to see you there. You can also, if you're interested in any web development services, contact airbridgeweb.com. It's a company that is my own. I don't often advertise my own stuff, but we need to do that from time to time. Thanks for riding with us today. I appreciate you. Join us tomorrow morning. We'll talk a little bit more about this issue of the IMF treason being suggested. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. Thank you. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow morning.